So we're on week 23, and we are focused on emotional design. And, as you go through this week, you'll see that it focuses pretty heavily on an app experience. But what I would recommend is that, if you're in service design, focus on moments in service design. So the day one here, it talks about onboarding experience. Focus on the onboarding experience for a service. Or if it's a physical product, think about the onboarding for that. And you think about that from the perspective of sort of the late phase of marketing where someone transitions into purchase, but you could also think about that from the perspective of packaging, unboxing, any sort of material that exists in there that acclimates the person to the use of it, care instructions, and feel free to shift that. Maybe it's an animal adoption experience. So it's sort of a service and I hate to say this, but sort of service and product adjacent. It's mostly in the service space, but there's also material that could go along with it to support sort of your adoption of this animal. But really think about where you're going and where you hope to work, where you hope to find work, and think about how this could best serve you, because the important thing here is that we focus on emotional design. And one of the great things about emotional design, and just from my personal perspective, is that when I see it, and I see it done really well, not only is it instantly delightful, but it also reconnects me with some of the joy and fun that initially inspired me to be a designer. Personally, and I'm sure we're all this way, is that we love to find problems in the world and sort of alleviate suffering around the things that we have to do. But some aspect of alleviate suffering, sort of the instant gratification of that, are those joyful moments, those moments that bring us into that lighthearted feeling of happiness and joy. And because of that, this is a really interesting way to make a first impression with a potential team that you could work with, a potential customer, potential hiring manager, and honestly, frankly, anyone who's screening your content or your portfolio for you as a candidate. So, granted, you still need to focus on the topic at hand, the cause at hand, because you don't want to produce meaningless joy in your applications or services. But at the same time, if you get that sweet spot between really great emotional design and functional support of the person using the thing, it can make a really strong first impression. So as you're going through this, again, focus on sort of the vein of design you're in, whatever hybrid of digital experience, service, and product. Think about your career goals, and but don't forget to focus very, very heavily on emotional design, because we don't always all get a chance to do something like this. These experiences, these opportunities are a little more fleeting. So make the most of it as you're going through it. Stepping through this, and one thing I'll point out is that normally when these tasks say focus on onboarding, I tell you, do onboarding or something else you're interested in. But the way these days are structured, I would say for this day one, definitely focus on onboarding. And then as you go through this, you'll see that they're all sort of different stages of a single experience. So day one, design an onboarding experience that evokes joy. Create a first impression that feels delightful, affirming, or energizing. And then you think about micro interactions, warm, playful copy, progress animation, surprise and delight moments. So sort of these things that are responses to interactions or progress, or motivators like a friendly mascot, and aspects of the app that may show that it is an active reflection of the person. So like personalization. It sort of remembers who you are and what you care about. And then sort of responses like confetti. sketch or prototype the onboarding, so get that flow down. If you want, you can include some examples of animations if you're really crafty with Figma or Framer or one of these tools that does animation very well. Or if you are good with something like After Effects, you can certainly build some of these out. But focus really on the rationale for what evokes joy about the onboarding experience. So think about the step-by-step, how it's conveying information, how people are entering things, and why that evokes joy. But also, if you have some of these extra layers of confetti or friendly mascots, personalization, copy, progress animations, micro interactions, so on and so forth, you certainly begin to concept those and include them along, and make sure to include your rationalization in this. Don't lose sight of the fact that this is a functional thing when you're thinking about your emotional design. Day 2, prototype a feature that helps reduce user frustration. So this is not in the onboarding space. Look for an aspect of the app you're working on or the app that you are trying to overhaul from an external perspective. Find a friction point, and it could be for any number of reasons and solve for any number of reasons, but identify that key pain point in the experience and rework or prototype a feature that eases that friction. And think about error recovery. Something goes wrong. Think about loading states, help or hinting mechanisms, and undo flows. And then go back when you're thinking about prototyping the feature to reduce user frustration. Maybe consider how micro interactions, warm, playful copy, progress animations, surprise and delight moments can support that. So how can you not only alleviate the pain, but better set expectations about what's going to help next in terms of error recovery, and add a layer of delight to it. And in an app, this could also mean the integration of service. What does it mean if you hit an error and you're at an impasse, but it then says, but we have a customer service rep on the line for you to help talk through what to do next? Like how do you alleviate error recovery in the most delightful way? So prototype this. This can be low fidelity. Include an explanation of how it addresses the real user pain. So this is what the pain is. This is what the solution is. This is how it addresses it. Or this is what the pain is. This is how we think we need to address it. This is how we addressed it. This is why it works. But really get into a rationalization for why you did that. Day 3, add playful elements to a commonly used app. So what I would say for this is, if you're working on these as individual challenges and not a cohesive week-long challenge, just pick an app and think about areas where playfulness could be added to it. If you're working on one continuous app or trying to work on a single app experience, maybe go to one that's parallel and just a similar competitor, and think about how you could improve aspects of the app with playful elements and then bring it back to yours. Or you could just consider your app and think about how you could add additional playful elements within it. It could be cohesive across the entire experience, or it could just be a point in time in the app, or just a particular segment of the app. Maybe this is your opportunity to rethink what account management looks like in your app, some place that people aren't very often, but it could be a fun, playful area to do something. But as you're thinking through this, consider animated confirmations, fun avatars or rewards, Easter eggs or personality, and any of the things that we've talked about prior to this point. Add delight to a utilitarian or boring moment without compromising usability. So, as you're picking out apps, you could find something that's super dry. So, maybe it's the Bloomberg trading experience. It's very, very dry, very, very utilitarian. But how could you add emotional design to that. Maybe there's already so much emotion in there that it doesn't need it. Traders are pretty stressed as they're looking at all this information, and they're in a state of hyper focus. The question is, what does delight look like to them in that moment? Maybe it's not an animated character, but maybe there's some other aspect to it. But it could also be a newer experience. It just hasn't had an opportunity to look at things this way. So however you go about it, you can always focus on your career goals and your design goals, and think about how you can showcase your ability to do this within a scope that will support your career path. Day 4, create a design that builds user trust. So again, find another part of the app that you're working on, or pick a new one, and think about an area where people might normally feel unstable in a moment. I think a lot of times this would be in a moment where, from a service design perspective, processing would need to be in someone else's hands. So you submit a request for something, or you submit a complaint, and that it's basically, from a time perspective and energy perspective, it's out of your hands, but you're waiting on something to come back. It could be a moment that's pretty common. But make your product feel safe, honest, and consistent. And beyond your product, make the entire experience feel safe, honest, and consistent, because your product exists in a world where people are trying to accomplish things within a context. So your product is typically just a small part of that, unless it's a game or something along those lines. It's very rare that your product is the entire experience. So it may be a way to help you find opportunities for redesign to build trust. Think about a transparent onboarding process. What do we do with your data? Think about security clues, verified labels, lock icons, so on and so forth. Humanizing service agreements, that would be an interesting place to go. Create an annotated mockup or microcopy demonstrating trust building tactics. And again, it may be an opportunity for you to step back from the product itself and think about those spaces in between, the spaces prior and the spaces after use of the app. How do you make it so that the user trusts that things are being carried forward or managed or maintained in a meaningful way? Day 5, sketch a UI that communicates empathy and care. Help users feel seen, supported, and not alone. This could be mental health check-ins, thoughtful error messages, accessibility, first UI, language that softens and affirms. Create a sketch, design snippet, could be a video, short write-up, however you need to communicate this, but find a way to design a UI or a touch point or a part of sort of the product use, whether if it's a physical product that communicates empathy and care for the user. And some of them, like these here, when it comes to like mental health check-ins, if you're using social media too long and it says, hey, maybe you need to stop for a bit, or I think the iPhone started doing this recently where it says, hey, do you need to go into work mode and block everything off because these are your normal work hours. That may be good. It's challenging because some of these may be contrary sometimes to the mode of the app or the purpose of the app. So if Amazon at some point said, hey, maybe you've purchased a lot of stuff recently, maybe you need to stop purchasing things, it feels kind of silly, right? But at the same time, interesting check-in for someone that may communicate empathy or care for them. So day 1 through day 5, these are all fun challenges, I hope, when you look at these, designing for emotional design, empathy, care, trust, trying to make it so that you are in your product service or digital product are a supportive member of that relationship between you and your user. It's a really interesting and fun week. I'm really excited. I hope you all find this as interesting and fun as I do, and that you enjoy going through it. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's output here, and appreciate you hanging in there with me for 15 minutes as I go through this weekly summary, and I look forward to seeing you each day and what you produce.